What's that sound? It's for amusement only, the EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast. Welcome back to For Amusement Only. This is Nick Baldridge. Before I get started today, I need to make a really obvious, terrible correction. I recorded that episode about Sing-Along and completely botched the artist. It was not Roy Parker, of course. It was Art Stenholm. And he did a number of games for Gottlieb. A few for Williams and a couple for Bally. So, my apologies. Got that totally wrong. Tonight, let's talk about the Bingo Row. And let's talk about the York Show. I just came back on Saturday night, late, from the Bingo Row and the York Show. And I will tell you I had an excellent time again. The York Show, of course, is an excellent event, and this year was no exception to that. There were quite a few wonderful playing wood rails there, including games like King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table, a Genko Rocket, and sitting beside it, a Genko South Pacific, and both of those games have a very similar layout, but play very differently. There was a Four Bells there. Steve Smith brought his Derby Day. That's a fun game. And Four Bells is really challenging. I've never played Dragonette, but it's the same playfield layout, just with different artwork. I really enjoyed that one. There was a flipperless stage door canteen. I've always wanted to try that one, and I thought that one was a lot of fun. Let's see, what else was there? Oh, one of the best playing games, I thought, was Gottlieb's Spot-It card. And that's a wood rail. It's got a kick-out hole feature similar to many of the games that pass the ball from hole to hole, like Sing-Along. But instead of passing the ball from hole to hole, it kicks it down to a little post with a tiny rubber tee on the top that shoots it back up into the next hole. It's ingenious. I love it. The animation is more vibrant than those pass along the hole games, and you have a greater opportunity of messing it up and the ball coming down. So your nudging skills have to be on point in order to do well. Aside from that, I pretty much stuck to the Bingo Row. I did play a few other games, but not very much. Instead, I wanted to be where the action was, and the action was with the bingos. So this year, instead of the 5 bingos that I brought down, with a 6th joining me at the show, I just brought down 5 bingos. Really slowed it down from last year. So I have a little interview coming up later in the show, but I had a helper that flew all the way down from Michigan, and I was very pleased that he was able to do that. He and I loaded the truck by ourselves. Last year, I think there were 3 or 4 people that were helping, but I've obviously chased them all off with moving bingos. So I have to fly them in from out of state now. But yeah, Ryan Claytor flew in and helped me load up all the bingos. The problem that we had was we were planning to load on Wednesday night, and I had flown in from a business trip on Wednesday afternoon, and Ryan was flying in Wednesday afternoon as well. So we go to pick up the truck, get back to the house, and while we're en route, it starts pouring. I mean, the sky opened up, cats and dogs. By the time we got to the house, it had slowed a little bit, but it was too rainy, I felt, for us to load. Now, the loading operation is not the most efficient. What I end up doing is wheeling a game out of the garage, taking the head off, loading the head in the truck, taking the playfield glass down, removing the balls, taking the legs off, loading the cabinet up, and then loading the legs up, and putting all the bolts in one bag, balls in another, and away we go. Well, that's what took us so long, is doing all that. And I'm of the opinion, better safe than sorry most of the time, and that tends to work out. Now, last year, if you'll recall, there was an unfortunate incident where one of my ratchet straps came unhooked, and the heaviest head in the truck fell down, and it brought along another head with it. Luckily, there were no casualties, nothing new was broken. There was a broken back glass in the smaller head, and the glue that was holding the glass together broke apart. But no new broken bits of glass. Everything was good. Nothing broken mechanically. Everything was fine. So that was a miracle. And this year, I took ticker tape, which I took last year, double up. That was the one that fell down last year. Caravan, that's the one that met me at the show last year. The multi-bingo. And I also took Gay Time. So we got all those loaded up, no problem. Now the multi, I didn't want to take the head off of. So we loaded it in with the head and the body attached and just ratchet strapped it to the side of the truck. And that went very well, actually. Unfortunately, I left the balls in and didn't really think about it. But my logic there was that I didn't want to test if my connectors were really good as far as taking the game apart. I have never done that since assembling it, so I didn't want my first test to be taking it out in public for the first time and seeing if it worked. I need to do that eventually and make sure it still works, because at some point I got to paint the thing. But I took it out there with its current raw artwork on the sides, and I wanted people to be able to play it. So we get loaded up, we drive up to Pennsylvania, and it's raining, it's drizzling, it's not very nice weather. We get there and it's still drizzling. It's not raining per se, but it's not super light drizzle either. There was water coming down, and we get there and I'm, going, man, this is not good. We're never going to get these things unloaded in time. It was about 6:30 p.m. when we got there, which is much, much later than I usually like to get there. I like to get there around noon if I can. So it's 6:30. The hall closes at 8 o'clock. And I just figure there's no way we're going to get these games in there and get them set up. But as luck would have it, Chad and Len were there, and they were able and willing to help, and I was so grateful because they both came out with dollies and just whipped the games into the fairgrounds there, and had the legs on them and everything. It was incredible. They were absolute lifesavers. Ryan and I got everything into position, and they wheeled it out, made sure they didn't fall off the ramp, and everything was good. Man, it went so well, and it's all thanks to Chad and Len. So thank you guys, if you're listening, for all your help. It was incredibly appreciated. Thank you. So we get everything assembled except for 2 heads on the games. One was Caravan and one was Double Up. Double Up has an incredibly heavy head, and I was a little concerned about that. But next morning we got there bright and early when the hall opened, and got Double Up and Caravan's head bolted on. Everything was good. So that was exciting. Fired up the multi, made sure everything was good on there, and the lifter, for whatever reason, wouldn't lift the first ball automatically. It would lift every other ball, but wouldn't lift the first one. and I thought that was pretty odd. And the score and instruction displays were rebooting themselves after a period of time. It might have been 20 minutes, might have been a little less, might have been an hour. Whatever the case was, I ended up having to reboot the game several times just to get the score and instruction displays back. Now, most people, didn't notice that, I think. But and if they did, they were too polite to say anything, which is fine too. But at first, I thought there was some kind of problem with the voltage, to the game, and so I tried to preempt that by running a cord out the back and plugging the UPS that powers the computer and so forth directly into a power strip. That didn't resolve the problem, though. So basically, I was bypassing the service outlet, which I have wired to the power switch. So at this point, I'm saying, well, I hadn't tested it in a low voltage condition, so I wasn't sure how it was going to react. But that actually wasn't the problem. As it turned out, as we found out in the evening on Friday, one of the main power feeds to the bingo row had actually come partially unplugged from the ceiling where it was dropped from. And this was causing all kinds of weirdness, and finally it came unplugged enough, I suppose, that everything started misbehaving on the row. You had lights dimming and flickering out and all kinds of crazy behavior. At that point, I had been cruising around the show, playing some wood rail games. I played a beautiful Gottlieb Universe. Played I think it was a wagon train. And then I was playing a big inning, 2-player with Ryan Claytor. And I get the call over the PA, Nick, return to your game. There's something wrong with the bingo. So I go over there, and power's acting all crazy, so I shut the thing down and unplug it, just to be sure. Let them know at the front desk what's going on, and they came over and fixed it really quickly. I was incredibly impressed and grateful that they were able to get that over there and get it fixed, get a huge ladder over there and get it fixed. They did, and I fired everything up, and everything was fine. One of the score and instruction displays, the score one, would no longer come up, though. And unfortunately, one of the key components that I left at home was the keyboard that allows me to check and see, what's going on with the actual computer that's underneath the game. Luckily, I didn't really need it the whole time we were there. And once I got home, I took a look at the score display, and I thought maybe the SD card had partially cooked or something, and had wiped out some of my data. But that wasn't the case. Actually, what had happened is because of the low power event, it was power cycling the Pi that drives it, the Raspberry Pi. And every time it did, it would log a whole bunch of junk, and then it would come back up and log a whole bunch more. And what eventually happened is that it filled up the SD card with logs. I hadn't set it to read only. So, because I didn't do that, that's what caused the problem with the score display. But otherwise, the multi behaved very well the whole weekend. Also, when they got the power fixed, suddenly my lifter problem was fixed, which is great. Luckily, that was in the evening on Friday, and things were winding down. All day Friday, we had a ton of people come through, playing the games, and trying to get a t-shirt. This year, for a 4 or 5 in a line, we were giving away a t-shirt that was illustrated by Ryan Claytor. Beautiful Bingo Row t-shirt. So we had a lot of people that were interested in competing for that. That's always great. Last year it worked out really well too with autographed copies of Jeffrey's books. What ends up happening is people end up really digging into the games, trying to get that 4 or 5 in a line. We had one person there who worked incredibly hard for it, and he left me a little feedback on the Facebook page. So I'm going to read that anonymously here. He said, "Thanks for bringing your games out to York. It really made the show for my friends and I. None of us had ever played a bingo before, but we discovered they're much more exciting than we thought. It took me 3.5 hours, but I did win a shirt." And I want to say that I am really proud of that guy. He was really eager to win a shirt, and he did a fantastic job. He really understood the rules, and he and his group of friends were alternating on Miss America 57. And he had been back and forth with a few different games, but wound up winning on Caravan. And he just did a great job. He was really digging into the rules of every game. I was very impressed. And I was impressed with all the winners this year and last year. I mean, that's just an example of a new bingo player that's really excited. And I've said it before, I'll say it 100 bajillion times, but these games are very exciting. And especially when you learn all the different ways that you can make an inline win. You'd think that just placing some numbers beside each other would not be that exciting, but the thing is, when you're trying to make that last number that you need for a really nice inline win, the tension and the drama that's created in attempting to do that, or failing to do that, is second to none. These games are just amazing. So I'm really happy to share them with people. I think that's an important thing. I certainly didn't know they existed until my friend Steve showed me. And since that day, I've been kind of bingo crazy. But it all worked out. At any rate, that was kind of blending together Friday and Saturday. Again, I'm very proud of all the winners. Everybody did a great job. And it's not an easy thing to get a 4 in a row. There's a reason I set that goal. It is achievable, but you do have to work for it. And it seems to work out very well. And now I've got a good amount. I went to the show with 60 shirts to give away, and I came back with 2. So I think everything worked out there. I think I got just enough. So that's pretty great. Now, Chad and Len had to leave on Friday night, and they had brought Beach Club and a Big Time. Beach Club is, I believe, the second bally game with Select a Spot. And Big Time has magic lines on all 5 columns, which is something to see. Both games have super cards, and both games have rollovers. So those are both excellent games, and they were great additions to the Bingo Row. We had 14 games this year, but on the first day, and when those 2 left, we were down to 12. But all the games saw a ton of play over the weekend. I know a few of my games had over 2,000 plays. The multi, I felt like I did more explaining than people playing. And I'll get into the numbers for that later on, but I think that went really well. So let me talk about, kind of how that went from my perspective. I'm not going to spend a lot of time patting myself on the back or anything, but I am very proud of what I was able to accomplish. I know it didn't look like much as far as the cabinet goes, but it will. Give that time. I also know that I probably didn't have your favorite game programmed in there, but I will. Give that time too. This is a labor of love, and as such, it's nice to get that positive reinforcement that maybe you're not wasting your time. And I got a lot of positive reinforcement. all the bingo players that came up to play the game were very excited to play it. And I think, or I have thought, that I was on the right track there. I enjoy the gameplay of it, and I've only been in bingos for a few years, but I really love them, and I didn't want to do them a disservice by messing with the gameplay. And in that regard, I think I've succeeded. All the bingo players, I asked them for their honest opinion of the gameplay, and after they got through the "I can't believe this is," or "this is amazing," or "incredible," or whatnot, they said unanimously that it played very well, and exactly like the real thing, which is precisely what I was going for. So I think I've succeeded there. Again, I was just floored by how much positive response there was. And I met bingo players which I had never met before. There were people who drove down to the show just to see this multi-bingo. I was very proud to stand there and shake their hand, say hello, meet them. I am just thrilled with the reaction. So, again, I don't mean to pat myself on the back too much, but I am pleased. So, thank you to everybody who came out and made the Bingo Row a success. The second annual, I guess we can call it, Bingo Row a success. I said this last year, and I'll say it again. Next year, I'll probably bring a lot fewer. I'm thinking somewhere in the order of 2, one being the multi. But we'll see. I obviously forgot how easy it was last year. So a big thank you to all of the following bingo guys who brought their games, came out there, helped load or unload, or were generally just available to talk to and give tutorials and all that good stuff. We had myself, Ryan Claytor, we had Jeffrey Lawton, who brought his Miss America 57 and his Broadway. Jim Holder came out and tried the multi and got to play the games. This year he wasn't able to bring the games, but I appreciated him coming out. Steve Smith played the games. I couldn't convince him to bring a bingo this year, but he did bring his awesome Derby Day, and that was a fun game. We had Robert Madel and Sal Mazzio, both of which have been on the podcast before. They came all the way from Ohio, and it was great to see them. Sal worked really hard on United Showboat to get his t-shirt, and Robert helped us load up on Saturday. Robert brought his Carnival Queen and Silver Sails, and Carnival Queen sold at the show. Chad and Len, I mentioned them before. Thank you again, guys, for everything. They brought the Beach Club in the big time. And then Pete. Pete last year brought his Circus Queen, and this year he did as well. That's a great game. I love playing it. There was a guy playing it this year who only played it for a short time last year, but he played it a lot this year, and that was cool to see. I think he's generally a flipper guy, so that was, again, very neat to see. And Vic Camp. Vic Camp drove all the way out to the York show, and I really appreciate him coming down and trying the multi. I was hoping to get the seal of approval from him. As a fantastic player, I wanted to make sure that it played well, and he gave me the thumbs up, so I'm pretty pleased about that too. And Bingo Butch and his son Mike, they brought the Broadway 51 and the United Showboat, both of which are excellent, rare games. It was really nice to have them as a part of the Bingo Row, and it was great to meet both of them too. Thank you to all the bingo guys that came out to play. Again, I met a ton of people, and I would name everybody if I could, but I can't. So thank you all. If you came up and said hello, thank you. if you came up to get a tutorial, thank you for playing the games. That's why I brought them there. Thank you for winning shirts. Thank you for asking questions. Thank you for being a great part of my show experience. And I really appreciate everybody, player, collector, whomever you are. If you came down and just gave him a shot, that is much appreciated. So, next year, let's do it again. Again, I'm gonna say that I'm scaling back now. In order to do that, I'll have to rent a smaller truck, though. So we'll see if that actually happens. But if I do, I certainly hope others take up the mantle. I've been talking with folks already, and I think there's going to be quite a few there. So next year should be great. If you didn't make it this year, definitely come out next year. York is a fantastic show, no matter what you're into, but most especially if you're into EM games, and of course, the bingos. So, before we call it a night, let's hear from my traveling buddy, Ryan Claytor. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I've recovered, and I'm doing really well.
You ready to move some more bingos?
Yes.
All right, that's good. So, I guess first, what did you think of your first York show?
Oh, man. It was everything I hoped for and more. It was, so I don't know how much you've prefaced this conversation with your melodious podcasting voice, but I live in Michigan, which is not close to York. So, and I heard about your bingo row last year, and I was really bummed out that I didn't get to experience that, and really wanted to be a part of it this year, somehow, if for nothing else than just experiencing it. So Nick and I, who have become fast friends over the past year and a half or so, we decided that I would fly to Virginia, pack up a bunch of 400-pound plywood boxes in a Penske, and unload them all at York, and get to experience Bingo Row. So I'd also heard that York was a great show for EM games and wood rail games, and I've been getting really into EMs and wood rails recently, and so I spent a healthy amount of time playing the wood rails, and was just really taken aback by the quality of the wood rails. Lots of great restorations going on, and the inventive gameplay, the different layouts that you just don't get with today's standard fans. And so I was in daddy vacation heaven for the weekend. My lovely wife, said, go have a good time. See you at the end of the weekend. And a good time was had.
That's good.
Yeah.
Now, when you got here, things were a little hectic, but we got it all taken care of, I think. But that was your first experience playing a bingo and having someone there talking you through it. Yeah, it was in your garage. I think I'd played it one other time, which I kind of don't even consider playing it. I was at the Pinball Hall of Fame, and despite listening to your shows, I was super duper confused. And so having you there talking me through some games really helped. But I think it really started to click in the bingo row at York when I could see a different play method. I'm thinking, of course, about Vic, this, but Vic Camp showed up, and he's got this different way of holding the machine and nudging the machine, which really sort of fit my body type, I guess. It felt a lot more comfortable to me, and to my surprise, at the end of the weekend, I was even giving tutorials to new people walking up to the bingos and just having a great time. And
really getting excited about some of the hits that people were making. And, of course we had the shirts. And so by the end of the weekend, I had really warmed up to the bingos. Like I gotta say, when we played in your garage, I understand conceptually that there are a lot of decisions to be made, but I was still like, I don't know. I still feel like I'm just sort of lobbing the ball up and like hoping for the best, Plinko style, when it comes down, But over the course of the weekend, I really like kind of understood how to move the ball and what you could do with it, and like even warmed up to some flipperless games that weren't bingos, like your Exhibit Mystery, and there was a Gottlieb Stage Door Canteen there that was really cool. And I'm probably tangenting way more than your question just asked, but
No,
I was
all good.
I was really excited about the weekend.
I was too, and I was really happy to have help moving the machines. No, that worked out very well. And
Yeah, you'll have to send a thank you card to your wife who helped us unload them all.
Yes, I couldn't believe that she did that, but it was much appreciated.
I was pretty flabbergasted. I mean, just to fast forward to the end of the weekend, we made our way back through torrential downpours and roll into your place. What was it, like 11 p.m. or after? And she was out there pushing these things around with us till after 2 a.m. Like, I could not believe she stuck around the entire time. It was really quite something. So kudos to Mrs. Bingo Podcast.
Well, you know what they say about the family that bingos together.
Sleeps very well together.
Yes, that's true. So we sent you back with about a half dozen bingos, if I recall. And how are those faring now?
Once I got them out of the overhead compartment and reassembled, no, I took home 0 bingos. but they're definitely on my radar now, as are a lot of other older games, wood rails, flipperless game. Like, I think one of the biggest revelations of the weekend was that I enjoyed flipperless pinball. Like, I kind of expected to warm up to bingo pinball, but I had always sort of written off flipperless pinball as, again, what do you do with it? There's no way to control the ball, and they can't have interesting rule sets. I mean, what are you going to do? You're just hitting a couple bumpers. But I was a bunch of wrong about those. And like really found myself fancying a number of flipperless games. And now, again, those are on my radar too. I should probably shut up about them so they don't
skyrocket.
Exactly. I hate flipperless pinball just as I did before.
In fact, it's worse than I thought.
They should be less money.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting once you get the idea that you are essentially the flipper, you are the ball control. It makes the games open up, and the rule sets are pretty interesting because they're always vertically stacked. So you got to figure out the best way to get the ball down, hitting the most stuff to complete your sequence, and eventually collecting those specials.
Yeah, exactly. And then, like you said, there's this progression, which I never expected. I thought it was just lobbing the ball up and then hoping it hits a big target. But there were rule sets in these flipperless games, too. It's just, I had a very mind-expanding pinball weekend. It was great.
That's good. So, as far as bingos go, what was the best machine that you played all weekend?
So, I think you and I talked about this a little bit, that I really kind of gravitated toward the moving numbers games. And I wasn't as hot on the 6-card games, although I hear that they get more complex in the later 6-card games. And then the Magic Screen games, maybe I just didn't put enough time on them, but I felt like the moving numbers aspect was, at least visually, from an aesthetic perspective, much more interesting. But I also felt like it was fun to, like, I could see the numbers moving around in my head before I moved them, and I was able to, like, think of ways to make inline hits from moving those numbers. I don't know. I just gravitated toward those. So there was a Miss America. I can't remember what year. I know there's a few of them.
57.
Okay. And then I also really liked your Gay Time, which had not only moving numbers, but also magic pockets.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just such a cool mechanic to see all the balls sort of catapult to the next hole. And those are probably my two favorite games of the weekend, bingo-wise.
Excellent. Now, on the Magic screen, I know I said I needed to get you a more thorough tutorial because I think you only saw them from afar, really. But they are a whole different breed and require extra explanation.
Yeah, so essentially you're no longer just going for inline wins. You're going for like a pattern that
Correct.
exists on the screen, right?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
And they're just more complex as far as the decision-making process goes. So, with the numbers actually rotating or moving up and down or back and forth or whatever the case may be, it's pretty easy to visualize, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Because you're still going for inline, so you're just trying to put them in a row. But with the Magic screen, you're trying to visualize an upside-down L or a weird H or a U or something, and put all the numbers in those spots before the time tree locks you out. So it's just a step up in complexity, really. But,
yeah, I have a feeling if I put more time in on something like that I would come to appreciate that too. But in my rudimentary bingo phase that I'm in right now, the moving numbers were really tickling my fancy.
Well, I don't blame you. Magic squares are my favorite feature.
Yeah. To see those things rotate around like in Nightclub or oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name.
Broadway,
I should look in
Showtime.
It was the Caravan.
Oh, Caravan. Yeah, that's the Roto feature, the ultimate Magic Square.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, what did you think about those really rare games that showed up? The United Showboat and the Broadway 51. What do you think of those as far as gameplay and maybe differences between the other ones?
From a historical perspective, I couldn't believe that they showed up. I was just so thankful to Bingo Butch that he was willing to bring out such rarities and let everybody hammer on them for the weekend. And, Bingo Row's pretty well manned. I don't think anybody got out of control there. But, it was just a treat to see those there. As far as gameplay was concerned, I think it was the Broadway. I'm flipping through my Bingo Row pictures here. Broadway that had the single gigantic bingo card in the back.
Yep.
That, there's no moving numbers features. There's no odds. It was, maybe you can tell me a little more about it. Was it one of the first bingo pinball machines ever produced?
Yes, in the modern style with the 25-hole playfield. It was actually the second. So Bright Lights came out, and then they tested Broadway. As far as anybody knows, it never made it to full production. But what was unique about that game is that it had a different playfield from the Broadway that's pictured on IPDB. It had a blue background instead of the red, which was used in Bright Lights. Even though it uses the same playfield, it had different coloration, which was kind of odd. So, there have also been reports of people having played it. Now, they might have all been samples, but it's kind of odd because a lot of them were from New York.
And they probably wouldn't have sent samples out there, right?
All the way to New York. Yeah, that would be a little odd, I think.
Yeah.
But, I don't know for sure. So, yeah, it was awesome. I can't believe he brought those either. That was great to play those.
Yeah. If we're talking about gameplay, though, I liked having more control over how I get my wins rather than everything being static. The back glass is static. The holes are static. And then what was the other one? Mississippi Showboat or just Showboat?
Yeah.
Showboat was a 6-card, and as I mentioned before, I didn't gravitate to the 6 cards. So that's how I felt about that.
Gotcha. I really like
I
the
said,
the coin animation when you push the button.
Yeah, was that the one that had a really long light sequence? Yeah, yeah.
And the machine made this cool noise too while it was doing it.
Yeah, that's something that I was really taken by on not only the bingos, but you and I got to play Turf King while I was at your place, and I just thought that was such a neat aspect of the game that I didn't really realize was even a part of it because I'd never played them before.
Yeah. So, what did you think of the multi bingo?
It's okay.
All right, better scrap it.
No, it was, dude. It's an absolute tour de force. Nobody could believe you completed that thing in the amount of time you had, the amount of games you had in it, that it was fully functional all weekend long. Yeah, I heard comment after comment from so many different folks walking up how amazing it was. And even if people didn't understand what it was, I think people don't understand bingo pinball very well. And consequently, I saw, despite Bingo Row being really well populated, there were a lot of people that also walked right past it. I was looking at a number of wrap-up videos online about, here's Wood Rail Row, and here's some wedge heads, and, I don't know what these are. Let's walk past real quick. Like, even if people didn't know what it was, they stopped and took notice. And, it's really incredible, man. And to have it available all weekend long for people to play, super cool. And it's not even a third of the way done, and it's already impressive. I mean, you've got 40 games in there. There's 130 total that you're going to try to put in there.
Yep.
And then you're working on stencils. I mean, I've been following this very closely, so I feel like I'm probably not the person to talk about it, but I was pretty enamored. Yes.
That's good. Let's keep it that way. Your cash payment is in the mail. So yeah, it was pretty gratifying to get you over here and let you play it. Actually, that was the first bingo I had you try. Was Bright Lights in the multi.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
what about you? I wanna flip this interview on you a little bit. How did you feel about the reception of the multi bingo over the course of York?
I was actually quite surprised. I didn't think that it would be quite the hit that it was. I thought it'd be one of those sleeper kind of things. But practically everybody who came up to Bingo Row and got a tutorial or was a longtime bingo player could not believe it, and that was really gratifying because I got a lot of compliments on the gameplay from longtime bingo players, which was something I was hoping for, but I wasn't holding my breath for. So there's a couple of areas, especially on games with advancing odds, where I just need to make small changes to the portioning. But that was really the only comment that I had that was in any way negative. And of course, everybody wanted magic screen games in them. So I did get that comment frequently.
Yeah.
Where's the OK games? But
how come you only have 40 games in here in less than a year?
Only 40. Yeah. But, it went incredibly well. I couldn't believe the response, and got response from all different kinds of people, too. There were players and operators and all kinds of people who wanted to talk with me about it, which was also gratifying. Told me I was on the right track anyway. So
can you tell us any specific stories or specific comments that stand out in your mind about reactions to the multi?
Well, there was a lot of this is absolutely insane, repeated multiple times. There were, most of the comments were very similar in that I can't believe you've done this. This thing plays very well. Yeah, I can't think of anything that really sticks out as unique that I have permission to say.
Right.
So I don't want to name names here, but
Can you rattle off some stats real quick about when did you conceive of this? How did you conceive of this? How long have you actually been working on it?
Sure. Yeah. I conceived of it about the first time I opened up the back of a bingo. And I looked in there and said, this computer is amazing, but you could replace it with basically a single chip nowadays. And so as I grew in my understanding of bingos and learned more and more about the gameplay and the different types and so forth, I said, this is probably actually really possible if I sit down and think about it some more. And about a little under a year ago, so maybe like December of last year or so, I actually sat down and said, let me look into these frameworks. Let me look into the boards that are available and see if there's something I can put together here with the existing hobbyist stuff that's out there. And I settled on the P3 Rock after looking at the capabilities of a bunch of different boards. And I realized what I wanted to do is have a LCD in the back glass and be able to change the back glass dynamically and swap playfields and so forth. So then I started writing code to see if it would actually work. And that was about 7 or 8 months ago. And then everything kind of clicked about 7 months ago, and I realized it would work. So I started ordering boards and working on getting parts and so forth. And so from 7 months to today is really when it all coalesced.
So are your wife and kids looking forward to seeing you again?
They've been seeing a lot more of me, yes. Although I do most of my work late at night. So, it's time when they're sleeping. I try not to impinge on our family time too much, although I'm pretty guilty of doing that from time to time. So,
yeah, it was. You and I have been in very close contact over the past year or so, and I remember you looking into these boards and finally taking the plunge and following your thread on Pinside about the multi. So if anybody is interested in following this, it's very well documented, and I'm assuming will continue to be very well documented when you get back into it. Maybe you should put a show note, man.
You think?
I'll bet you could. I'll bet you could make a show note if you tried.
I don't know how these computer things work.
You just make it emulate every bingo in the universe.
Yeah.
You're still trying to figure out show notes, huh?
How do URLs work? I don't know. Yep, I'll pop that in there.
All right, yeah. Let me know your Libsyn password, and I'll put a show note for you.
That's what IT guys like to do, is share passwords. So yeah, it went really well. We only had a couple of funky breakdowns, but I think that's pretty darn good for the first showing of the thing, publicly. We had over 2,000 plays. I went back and checked the counter just on the multi. So that is pretty successful. And as we've talked, a play counts as a red button press. So if it's a game that allows you to fully play with 11 presses, then that would increment the counter 11 times. But
so translating that into pinball layman's terms, you're probably dividing that number by about, 7 or so on average, maybe?
Something like that, yeah. So let's see.
Several hundred plays over the weekend?
Yeah. And out of that time, there was that power fluctuation, which I mentioned earlier in the show. And what happened with that, I've actually already fixed the issue. The logging system for one of the score and instruction displays filled up the drive, and it couldn't boot properly anymore. So I fixed that, and now it plays very well. So yeah, 2,000 divided by 7 looks like 285 or so. But a lot of those games are single card or, odd things, so who knows?
So maybe even more than that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, man. Well, I was super proud to be a very small part of Bingo Row. I was happy to help you with the T-shirt and be there to pick up some of the slack when you guys were busy tutoring newcomers. I couldn't believe I was actually able to do the same a time or two. And it was just such a great group of guys. That's said about the pinball hobby all the time, but the bingo guys were very, very helpful. And it's like they know these boxes are gigantic and heavy, and we're just so willing to help out.
Yeah, it's a really special group of people, and thank you for becoming part of it. I was really proud to have your design there. It was beautiful, and a lot of people were made very happy by us giving those away. So thank you for your design work. It was amazing as always.
And it was pretty gratifying to see those red shirts walking around all weekend.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I can't believe how many you decided to print. There were a lot of winners. I thought going into the weekend, he's going to walk home with a gang load of these things. And man, thanks to your guys' tutoring sessions, I don't think you had many left at all.
I have 2 left.
That is crazy.
That's just about right, I think. So yeah, and thank you again for helping to heft all those things. It was a lot of work and a lot of wait. Let's figure this out. A lot of rain, a lot of fun stuff, but we got it done, and I'm pretty proud of the result. So thank you very much.
You got it, man. Like I said, happy to be a part of it, and I think we figured out what do we have, like a ton of bingos in the back of the Penske.
Something like that is a large number. I tried not to think about it too hard.
Well, whatever makes us feel more masculine.
Maybe it was
let's
5
tout
tons.
those numbers.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that is what we figured out. We took all 130 Bally bingos with us.
Yep. It was hard to fit them in that 12-foot truck, but we did it.
Man. Well, yeah. Thanks again for taking me along for the ride, and I really hope we can do it again soon.
Absolutely. I'll see you next weekend.
See you in Michigan.
All right, Ryan. Talk to you soon.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So one last thing before I go. Just wanted to finish up here and say thank you again to everybody who came out and made this such a special York show for me. It'll forever live in my memory as the public reveal of the multi-bingo. And thank you to everyone for your kind words. And it just much appreciated, everybody. Everybody who helped us load or unload, incredibly appreciated. You don't know how much I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And one last thing I did want to mention. Loaded everything up, made it all the way back home. Nothing broke. Best kind of trip. So can't wait to do it again next year. And I hope to see you all out there and play some bingos in the interim. Well, that's all for tonight. Thank you very much for listening. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com, or you can call me on the Bingos line. That's 724-BINGOS1, 724-246-4671. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Casts via RSS, on Facebook, on Twitter at Bingo Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram, also at Bingo Podcast, or you can listen to us on our website, which is foramusementonly.libsyn.com. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.